Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're giving the dive industry its annual checkup. We're going to take a look at the vital signs of the major training agencies to see who's healthy, who might be struggling, and what it all means for us as professionals. For anyone working in this field, this is the million-dollar question, right? We all have our gut feelings, our personal favorites, but what does the data actually say? Well, a recent annual survey from the Business of Diving Institute gives us a surprisingly clear, data-driven answer.
Okay, let's dive right into this thing. The survey talked to 889 divers, and it's really important to know who these people are. Over 80% of them are dive instructors, or they own dive centers, and more than three-quarters have been diving for over a decade. So we're not talking about beginners here. This is the voice of experienced industry insiders. And they were asked a very simple but very powerful question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this agency to a friend?
But before we get to the juicy stuff, the results, it's absolutely crucial to understand the tool they use to measure this. After all, how you measure something really determines what you find. The survey uses something called the Net Promoter Score, or NPS for short, and this isn't some obscure metric they cooked up just for diving. Nope. This is a gold standard used by companies all over the world, we're talking Apple, Amazon, you name it, to figure out customer loyalty and satisfaction. It's a proven way to check an organization's health. So how does it work? It's actually pretty simple. Anyone who gives a rating of 9 or 10 is called a promoter. These are your biggest fans, the people who rave about you. 7s and 8s are passives. They're fine, but not exactly enthusiastic. And then anyone who scores from 0 to 6 is a detractor. These are your unhappy customers. The final score is just the percentage of your fans minus the percentage of your unhappy customers. It can go all the way from -100 to +100. Now, this is the key part. What does a good score actually look like? Well, anything above 0 is considered good. Get above 20 and you're in favorable territory. But the companies that are really knocking it out of the park, the ones with fiercely loyal customers, they're scoring above 50 in the excellent range. So keep those numbers in your head. Okay, now that we know the rules of the game, let's look at the scoreboard. Here are the 2025 vital signs for the dive industry. So what do we see here? Well, the first thing that just jumps right off the page is the overall picture. Right at the top, you've got the Divers Alert Network, DAN, with a really strong score of +49. But look what happens immediately after that. Only a few other agencies are even in positive territory. The vast majority, and this includes some of the biggest names in the business, are deep in the negatives. That's a really troubling sign for the industry as a whole. Let's break it down a bit. If we look at the demanding world of technical diving, only TDI gets a favorable score at +22. GUE is just barely positive at +7. And PADI's tech division, whoa, a staggering -65. Now, for recreational diving, the bread and butter of our market, the picture gets even more stark. Only SDI manages to keep its head above water, and just barely, with a score of +5. After that, it's a pretty steep drop, with the market leader, PADI, sitting at a -45. And it's the same story over in the fast-growing freediving space. PFI is leading the pack with a positive score of +12. But again, its PADI counterpart is way behind, with an NPS of -61. That is a massive gap in performance. When you pull back and look at all this data together, the diagnosis is kinda unavoidable. And honestly, for those of us who have built our careers in this world, it's a tough pill to swallow. We have a systemic, industry-wide customer satisfaction problem. All right, let's zoom in on the biggest player on the block because the case of PADI reveals this really fascinating paradox that sits right at the heart of our industry. First, look at this number, 97.9%. That's the percentage of survey respondents who are aware of the PADI brand. I mean, that's basically everyone. In marketing terms, that's a home run, an absolute slam dunk. Pretty much every diver on the planet knows who they are. And right here, this is the paradox in a nutshell. On one hand, you've got this massive, undeniable brand recognition. And on the other, you have a deeply negative satisfaction score of -45 from the very same group of experienced divers. So the question is, how can a brand be so well known, yet so poorly recommended by the pros? Now, you might be thinking, well, of course, professionals from other agencies are going to rate the biggest player poorly. But check this out. The data says otherwise. A 2024 survey specifically looked at responses from PADI's own instructors, and their verdict? They gave PADI an even lower score, -51. So this dissatisfaction isn't just external criticism. It is coming from inside the house. So where does this leave us? What's the prognosis here? What does all this mean for the long-term health and sustainability of scuba diving? And look, this isn't just about numbers on a chart or some academic branding exercise. These low satisfaction scores have very real consequences. The report draws a direct line between these poor vital signs and one of our industry's oldest, most stubborn problems: the incredibly high rate at which new divers just drop out of the sport. It's simple, really. Unhappy customers don't stick around. This sobering reality leads the people who wrote the report to a really powerful conclusion. They say that we are, and I'm quoting here, overdue to redesign the business model we use to introduce people to the underwater world. They're not talking about small tweaks here. This is a call for fundamental change. And that leaves all of us with one last, really challenging question. This data doesn't just rank agencies. It holds up a mirror to our entire industry. And looking at these numbers, we have to ask ourselves, is the way we currently do business fundamentally broken? That's a question worth thinking about.